The Possessed Pupils of Lauro. On February the 16th, 2017, 20 students of an agricultural school in Lauro, Colombia, had to be rushed to hospital and later taken to a church after what appeared to be a mass possession. Some of them had been playing with a mobile app version of a Ouija board, which was supposed to call on the spirits of the dead. At some point during their session, something went horribly wrong. When the emergency services came and started to treat the students, some of them lay on the floor howling and others were heard screaming, "The devil is going to take me." They were taken to a nearby church and blessed after doctors could find no scientific reason for their behaviour. Here's some of the freaky footage.
Situación crítica la que se vive en yo. Ya la profesora Ouija fue a hacer esto. Ya, no lo hace. Espera, respira.
Also, in April of 2016, between 80 and 100 school children of the Elsa Pereira Flores School in northern Peru were the subject of a mass demonic possession, experiencing seizures alongside horrifying hallucinations. It was reported by news agencies across the globe. Scientists and doctors have no explanation for the outbreak, and locals believe this is a case of demonic interference, saying some of the children must have played games that invoked demons, such as using a Ouija board. The Carols. It's Wednesday, December the 24th, 2014. For most of Britain, it was a normal Christmas Eve full of excitement, festivities and high spirits. However, for one couple, Paul and Margaret Carroll, the spirits they needed were of a different kind, the supernatural kind. Margaret was a self-proclaimed black witch who liked to dabble in the black magic, and Paul unfortunately had learning difficulties as well as mental health disabilities. The newspaper reports claimed that Paul was convinced his dog had been possessed by an evil spirit during a Ouija board seance. Paul and his wife were trying to contact the other side. Paul was so convinced that his dog was possessed, he drowned Molly, their Bedlington Terrier, in the bath and then later dismembered her and disposed of the dog's body down a drain. The alarm was raised when a company was called in to unblock the drains at the property in Ledgate, County Durham. Paul was sentenced to 18 weeks in jail and was suspended for 12 months with supervision. He was also ordered to pay £165 in court costs and banned from keeping animals for 10 years. The story doesn't end here. We move forward a month to January 30th, 2015. Margaret and her daughter Katrina Livingstone had taken a cocktail of pills whilst undertaking another Ouija board session, this time to contact the slaughtered dog. They received a message from a dark entity claiming that their lives were about to end imminently. Shortly afterwards, a fire tore through their home and the emergency services arrived quickly at the scene. The women were hospitalized and placed in intensive care, but for a reason which was not related to the fire. The pair were arrested and charged with arson with intent to endanger life. They were sentenced to 4 years in custody each with 2 years extended license. Michael McCallum. Michael McCallum was a devil worshipper who had converted the bedroom of his London flat into a satanic shrine, complete with Ouija board. On December the 2nd, 1995, Michael and his friend Pierre-Antoine lured Michael Erridge and Stephen Curran, who were both 15, back to McCallum's flat. The boys were pretty freaked out to find his bedroom was a shrine to Satan. The walls were covered in posters of torture, human sacrifice and images of the devil. Heavy metal records with satanic lyrics lay all over the floor. The words Devil Man Killer and 666 were scrawled onto the TV, along with a pentacle, and books and magazines of McCallum's idol, crazed mass murderer Charles Manson, sat in the corner. Against one of the walls was an improvised altar covered in a black cloth with 2 candles on it. McCallum pulled out a Ouija board and the 4 boys started a session to try and contact the devil himself. Things took a turn for the worst when the word kill was spelled out by the board after McCallum had asked, "If you are Satan, what is it you want me to do?" The two 15-year-olds were frightened and tried to leave. Antoine stopped them and said, "You are not going anywhere until I have done my master's will." McCallum then grabbed a 12-inch combat knife from under his hi-fi stereo and forced Irridge onto his bed. He then stabbed the 15-year-old 11 times in the neck and chest whilst Curran watched in horror. He only stopped when Antoine, who McCallum referred to as his apprentice, whispered, "Stop now, you can calm, he is dead." Michael's body was wrapped in bedding and dumped between the 7th and 8th floors of the flats where McCallum lived. Curran was made to put his fingerprints on the knife, then freed and warned not to tell anyone. He ran straight to Michael's father. As McCallum was being arrested that night, he grinned and said, "Guilty." McCallum believed he was making a sacrifice to Satan and considered the response from the Ouija board as his cue to kill. He had unspecified mental problems, accepted a plea of manslaughter due to diminished responsibility, and he was sentenced to a limited term at Broadmoor Mental Hospital. The Gulf Breeze 6. In November 1989, 6 US Army intelligence analysts, all with top secret security clearances, started experimenting with the supernatural while stationed at Augsburg, West Germany. Although they dabbled in everything from tarot cards to ESP, they only really had any success with the Ouija board. The Ouija board put the 6 soldiers in touch with an entity that named herself Sapphire, and others, including those presenting themselves as the Old Testament prophet Zechariah, Mark and Timothy of the New Testament, and the Virgin Mary herself. Sapphire had made predictions of the world, and when some of these started to come true, like the earthquake of Iran, it convinced the 6 that they were dealing with genuine supernatural encounters. They felt that they were chosen to act as instruments of God's will. They asked Sapphire how to carry out their divine mission, and Sapphire instructed them to flee the military regardless of the consequences because they were needed to help lead the world through an impending cataclysm. So they did. Sapphire warned them of a coming war and claimed mankind was about to make an evolutionary step. She stated that 1998 would be the date for the Antichrist to make his appearance, and instructed them to leave Europe on a mission to stop the end of the world as we knew it. They each left a letter which was dictated from the spiritual world and made their way to Florida. 5 days after going AWOL, they were arrested, forced to forfeit half a month's pay, and discharged from the army. The Exorcism of Ronald Hunkler. Most of us has either seen or heard of the movie The Exorcist. Not everyone knows the true story of what actually happened. In 1949, 13-year-old Ronald Edwin Hunkler went to stay in St. Louis with his grandmother for the summer. During this time, Ronald and his grandmother began to play with the Ouija board, which they considered just to be a bit of harmless fun. Ronald was first introduced to the Ouija board in the summer of 1948 by his aunt. It all began when Robbie heard some noises down in the basement. He looked around the house and noticed some strange things, like the image of Jesus in his grandmother's bedroom twisted and began to move as if somebody was hitting it from the wall behind. 11 days after that strange event, Ronald's aunt, who was very fond of the Ouija board, died. Right after she did, paranormal phenomenon began to occur. Robbie's mattress was violently shook in the middle of the night, there was a constant banging coming from the basement, a smell of excrement flooded everything, and ordinary objects like glasses and cups were found suspended in the air. Classmates of Ronald also testified that one day his desk began to move, violently shaking towards the corridor, colliding with other objects. The family invited a Lutheran pastor named Luther Miles Schulz to spend the night in the house. His experience was so terrible, he urgently advised the presence of an exorcist, despite the fact that he himself did not believe in demonic possessions. While noticing no change in Ronald's behaviour, the family enlisted the help of Father Bishop, a Roman Catholic priest teaching at St. Louis University. When Father Bishop entered the home, he found Ronald lying on his bed perfectly still as the bed violently shook underneath him. The bed ceased moving once Father Bishop sprayed holy water on the boy's body. But then Ronald quickly began experiencing sharp pains on his stomach. His mother pulled back the covers to reveal a series of scratches all over his torso. 2 days passed, and Father Bishop returned with Father Bowden from St. Francis Xavier College Church. Not long after entering the room and finding Ronald asleep, a bottle of holy water was thrown across the room by an unseen force, and a bookcase was pushed from one corner of the room to the other. A few days later, St. Louis Archbishop Joseph Ritter gave the permission to carry out an exorcism on Ronald. During the course of the next several days, the priest's prayers were met with violent actions and profanities, all emanating from the demonic presence they believed infected the boy. After a week of what must have been an incredibly stressful experience for Ronald, the family and priests agreed to take him to the psychiatric ward at Alexian Brothers Hospital. Once there, the rites of exorcism continued. Then on Monday, April the 18th, the day after Easter, the evil spirit made one last violent attempt at remaining inside Ronald before finally being expelled forever. The Exorcist has paved the path for many possession movies, but none can ever live up to the horror and fear this story has given, and many believe it was all started by an innocent Ouija board session. There you have my 5 picks of truly horrifying Ouija board experiences gone terrifyingly wrong. If you ever had a scary experience with a Ouija board, let us know in the comments below. I hope you enjoyed this video, thanks for watching, and I will see you in the next one.